Hola estudiantes y bienvenidos. Welcome to our video over La Gramática de Leccion Preliminar de Avancemos 2. Since this is Spanish 2 and this is our introductory unit, we will have muchas metas. This goal has several different learning goals because we are reviewing all the different grammar points from last year. Vamos a recordar, so we're going to recall several different things. I'm going to breeze through these, but I will go through them piece by piece on each of the slides that follow. So we're going to review our articles, both definite and indefinite. We're going to review our subject pronouns, the verb ser and its different uses. We will use ser along with adjectives and discuss adjective agreement. We're going to begin with conjugating some other irregular verbs, since there's ones that are just very common that we use to talk about ourselves. So ser was one of them. Other verbs include tener. We use this to say what we have as well as how old we are. Gustar is another irregular verb that we use to talk about ourselves, both with what items we like as well as what activities we like. We're going to use the verb ir to talk about where we like to go, as well as what we are going to do in the near future. In addition to ser, we're going to look at another irregular verb, estar, which also means to be. So we'll look at how we use these two to be verbs in different situations. Finally, we will review conjugation, this basic regular AR-ER regular verbs in the present tense, as well as those present tense verbs that we know as stem-changing boot verbs. Empezamos. Empezamos con los artículos. Recuerdan que tenemos definidos y indefinidos. In Spanish, we have articles which must match in the nouns that follow in gender and number. In Spanish, our definite articles listed here, we have el, la, los, and las. These are all the equivalent to the in English. So this would be the boys, the girl, the girls. So notice that I have singular, singular, plural, plural. What I do to one, I have to do to the other. On the indefinite side, these are our articles that are just less specific. For ejemplo, un, una, unos, and unas. These are equivalent to a, an, or some, depending on the noun that follows. So I have a boy, some boys, a girl, some girls. Subject pronouns. Here we have the subject pronouns that we use in conjunction with verbs in order to conjugate. So these tell us who is doing the action in our verb. Yo significa I. Tú significa you. This is informal you. Él significa he, ella significa she, and usted significa you formal. On our plural side, we have nosotros or nosotras, meaning we. Vosotros or vosotras, meaning y'all. Once again, this is the informal you all. Ellos or ellas, these both mean they, depending on my group. Is it a only guy group? Is it a mixed group? I will use ellos. If it's only females, I will specifically use ellas. Finalmente tenemos ustedes. This is the you all formal. So to break this down to make it a little bit more clear, we have tú, which is our informal you. That's what we use to talk to one friend or one family member, anybody we're on a familiar, friendly basis with. Usted's a little bit more formal. We use this with people that are older than ourselves or people of authority, such as bosses, police officers, etc., as a sign of respect. Vosotros or vosotras is when I'm directing a group of people. This is more common in Spain, and this is like saying y'all. That's just a little bit more relaxed, informal way to address a group. In Latin America, ustedes is going to be more formal, but it's also more common. They just don't use that informal form that we use, that they use in Spain. Es diferente. All right, so we have our subject pronouns here that we just reviewed with a common verb, the verb ser, which is one of our to be verbs. Remember, now that we're in Spanish 2, you do not necessarily need to use your subject pronouns. We learn these so that we can go over the concept of conjugation, but I don't necessarily need to say, yo soy de San Luis. I am from St. Louis. I can simply say, soy de San Luis, and the person knows that I'm talking about the first person, since there's no other conjugation that is the same way. So the verb form alone can indicate the subject. Ahora vamos a hablar de los adjetivos de página 8. In Spanish, adjectives must match the gender and the number of the nouns that they describe. Another difference with adjectives from English to Spanish is that adjectives usually are placed after the noun that they describe. Por ejemplo, if I'm describing a tall boy, I will say el chico alto. So my adjective follows. If it's a girl, I have to have agreement or concordancia, la chica alta. So my ending changes to match my noun. Even when it's plural, this is something that's different from English. I would say the tall girls. I don't say the talls girls in English. However, in Espanol, we have to have everything agree. What I do to one, I must do to the other. Los chicos altos, las chicas altas. With our adjectives that end in E, once again, we're going to have singular plural. Just notice that inteligente is the same regardless of the gender. So I have el maestro inteligente, la maestra inteligente. However, when I pluralize, notice that since this ends in a vowel, I just simply need to add an S. Los maestros inteligentes, las maestras inteligentes. Some adjectives will end in a consonant. An example of this is the word joven, young. El amigo joven, the young friend. If that friend is a girl, however, I have to say la amiga joven. When I make this plural, since it ends in a consonant, this time I'm adding not just an S, but an ES. Los amigos jóvenes, las amigas jóvenes. There are some adjectives that end in a consonant that we will add an A to make the feminine form. Por ejemplo, el hombre trabajador, la mujer trabajadora. El verbo tener. We learned tener last year, and we know that this verb is used to talk about what we have. However, there's a different expression in Spanish when we're talking about how old a person is. This is when I use tener. So I can say tienen un radio, they have a radio, but in Spanish I say tengo 15 años to indicate how old I am. I'm literally saying I have completed 15 years. In English we would use the I am verb to indicate this. So a little bit different in Espanol. Remember, tener is another one of our irregular verbs. It's an E to IE stem changer. However, in the yo form, there's a small exception. I don't stem change. However, I do add a G, so I refer to this as a go verb. We'll look at some other verbs that conjugate similarly. The rest of the boot, however, does have that stem change, E to IE, and my endings follow my normal ER endings. These are outside of the boot, so I conjugate those like a regular ER verb. Gustar. Gustar is a very common verb to indicate likes, what we like to do, what items we like. However, it's irregular. So this verb is not going to conjugate like a regular AR verb. I'm going to use the singular form when I'm referring to a noun that is singular. For example, if I want to say, I like Spanish class, me gusta la clase de español. I will keep my verb in the singular form since I'm agreeing with the noun that is singular, one Spanish class. However, if I'm describing something that's a plural noun, I will use gustan. Por ejemplo, ¿te gustan tus clases? Since I have a plural noun here, classes, my verb will be plural as well. So when I'm using gustar, it will only be in gusta or gustan form. Always, always, always. Okay, here we have it conjugated. Notice that the subject pronouns, regardless of the singular or plural form, are the same. Me, te, le, nos, os, les. However, if I'm talking about music, which is singular, I have to think of this a little bit differently than I like. It's literally to be pleasing to whatever person. So I'm saying the music is pleasing to me, the music is pleasing to you, the music is pleasing to him or her, the music is pleasing to all of us, the music is pleasing to y'all, and the music is pleasing to them. So remember, I have to think of it as that pleasing form. When I'm referring to a noun that's plural, so if I want to say we like animals, we would say nos gustan los animales. If I'm the one that likes the animals, since they are plural, my verb is also plural. I'm saying animals are something that are pleasing to me. We can also use gustar with infinitives to indicate what people like to do. So remember that an infinitive is a non-conjugated verb that ends in AR, ER, or IR. Por ejemplo, me gusta leer. I like to read. ¿Qué te gusta hacer? What do you like to do? Here we have some examples of these conjugated with the personal a in front of the noun or pronoun. This just adds emphasis to the person that we are talking about. ¿A ti te gusta el fútbol? Do you like soccer? A ellos les gusta bailar. They like to dance. Notice that when I'm using it with an infinitive, I will keep it in that singular form, gusta. A Rafael y yo nos gusta escuchar música. A la maestra le gusta el español. Notice that when I'm talking about a male, al maestro le gusta el español. I'll go ahead and make that a contraction. Ahora vamos a ver el verbo ir. Remember the verb ir is used to talk about where someone is going. So I can use ir a plus a place to say where someone is going. Por ejemplo, los estudiantes van a la biblioteca. So these are all our conjugations. It's a totally irregular verb, sort of like AR endings, o, as, a, amos, ais, an, with the exception of we have a Y here, and they all start with that B. So I like to think of it, since it means to go, like a fork in the road. Which way am I going to go, since they all have that B or that fork shape? We can also use this, instead of just saying where we're going, we can also say what someone is going to do in the near future by using ir, a plus infinitive. Los estudiantes van a leer. So if they're going to the library, they're probably going to read there. So I can leave this in the infinitive since it hasn't happened yet. Van a leer. Ahora vamos a hablar de ser y estar. Remember, in Spanish, both ser and estar mean to be, but they have very different uses. So step one is know the conjugations of both of these verbs. Remember, the estar form has some accents on these bottom two. Ser is our more permanent form. We use this to describe profession, origin, personality traits, or physical characteristics. Manuel es maestro. Él es de España. Es pelirrojo y muy simpático. Or I can use it to describe relationships. Tina es mi amiga. She is my friend. Or I can use it for time or date. Por ejemplo, son las 2:30. It is 2:30. I have an acronym, SNOTDIP. Kind of gross, but each of these stands for something because seres humanos are gross, human beings are gross. So remember, we use it for characteristics, nationality, origin, time, date, identification, professions, and possessions. Star, on the other hand, is our more temporary form. We use this for location and conditions, such as how someone feels. Alina está en la piscina. Está muy contenta. Another way to simplify this is we use a star for how you feel and where you are. So how you feel, where you are, always use the verb estar. If it's not about someone's feeling, condition, anything temporary, we're going to use ser. Ahora vamos a hablar de los verbos del presente regular. So we have some regular verbs like AR, ER, IR endings that follow our normal pattern. So the steps to conjugating a regular verb is step one, we drop the ending. Por ejemplo, hablar, I'm going to kick the AR to the curb. Now I will write my stem, hable, and I will add my endings according to whatever subject pronoun I'm working with. Yo will become hablo. So I have a little sing-song. What do you do to an AR verb? Take the AR, kick it to the curb. What do you do when that is done? O, as, a, amos, ais, an. With an ER verb, it's very similar. This time I'm substituting, instead of an A, we have some E's for all of our conjugation. So we have O, es, e, emos, es, en. For an IR verb, it's kind of a copycat to the ER verb. So notice we have O, es, e, and en. The only difference is the we form and the vosotros form. So nosotros and vosotros form on an IR verb, it's IMOS instead of EMOS, and simply IS with an accent. Little hint, whatever verb we're working with, if we're using vosotros, notice that our accent is on the A for an AR, an E for an ER, and an I for an IR. Moving on, finally, to our stem changers. These are los verbos con cambios de raíz. Stem changers de página 25. In Spanish, we do have some verbs that have stem vowels that change when they are conjugated in the present tense. So these ones do follow the normal endings. However, there is just a spelling change in the stem. So the stem is the part that's irregular. So we, once again, since they are boot verbs, we don't need to worry about the nosotros and vosotros. We don't stem change there. We keep it the same. So SER stays SER. One thing that we do need to change, though, is everything in these boot shapes is where that E changes to IE. The O might change to UE. Or the E might change to simply an I. So same endings, O, es, e, emos, es, en. We just need to pay attention to the stem changers only within that boot shape. Bueno, es todo. Muchas gracias por su atención y vamos a revisar más en la clase. Adiós.